I, 29M, think that my girlfriend, 26F, is only with me because she can't be with her best friend, 26M. Should I just end the relationship? Sorry for the long post. I didn't realize how much I had to say until I got it all typed out. Thanks in advance to anyone who reads all this. I've been with my girlfriend Jordan for a little over 2 years. We live together and we have 2 cats. Up until this weekend, I genuinely thought everything was perfect in our relationship, which I know is what everyone says in these posts, but I really was thinking that I was going to ask her to marry me sometime in the next year. We don't ever get into arguments. Jordan is very sweet and easygoing, and normally we just mesh well on everything. Honestly, if everything in our relationship hadn't been so good up until now, I probably would have just broken up with her this weekend. But because things have truly been so perfect, I'm not sure if maybe I'm jumping to the wrong conclusion about what to do because my feelings got hurt. The other person who's important in this story is Jordan's friend Mark. She's known Mark for their whole lives because they both grew up in the same small religious community. Jordan isn't part of that religion anymore. She decided to leave the church when she was, I think, 19 and moved to the state that we live in now. Mark still is in the religion and apparently takes it really seriously. I'm told he now works for the church back in Jordan's hometown. Also, as far as I know, Mark is the only person from the religious community that Jordan still talks to besides her parents, which I'm mentioning because I now think it could be a red flag. So on Saturday, I met Mark for the first time because he was in our city and Jordan wanted us all to have dinner together. At this point, I want to say, I will admit that when we were first dating and I found out that Jordan had a best friend who was a guy, I didn't really like it, especially because it seemed like they were on FaceTime with each other a lot. But since it was a childhood friend and they mostly didn't see each other in person, I just trusted Jordan that Mark was only a friend and didn't let it bother me, and eventually I got over it. So when we were going to dinner, I wasn't jealous or suspicious of Mark at all. If anything, I was somewhat excited to finally be meeting him since I've been hearing about him for 2 years. But then the way Jordan and Mark acted at dinner is what convinced me that there's something going on there other than just being best friends. I honestly don't even know how to describe it except to say that I've never seen two people act more obviously like they were in love with each other. They literally would not stop touching each other. They were constantly touching each other's arms and shoulders, and at some points they were actually even holding hands. They completely left me out of the conversation and were laughing about inside jokes. And every time they'd laugh, they'd do this thing where they put their foreheads together, or that was when they'd be holding hands. And then also they were just looking at each other in a way that I didn't feel comfortable with at all. It was honestly even worse than the touching. It just wasn't how anyone would look at somebody they're supposedly just friends with. I'm 100% sure that every stranger looking at our table thought that Jordan and Mark were the couple, and that I was her brother or something. I felt like a third wheel the whole time, and Jordan didn't even notice how awkward she was making it for me, because she was way too focused on Mark and all the attention she was getting from him. And that's really not like Jordan at all. Usually she's a lot more considerate, and would notice immediately if I wasn't having a good time, or if she was accidentally being rude and excluding someone at the table. So it was genuinely really jarring to be sitting there with her and Mark, and basically feeling like I didn't know my girlfriend at all. It was like he turned her into a completely different person who didn't even care that I was alive. So finally, at one point when Jordan got up to go to the bathroom, I just said to Mark, "So are you into my girl, or what's going on here?" "Mark, nothing's going on at all. That ship sailed a long time ago." "Me, what does that mean? Did you guys date at some point?" "Mark, no, we never did. And then when she left the church, we both knew it meant that we were never going to. And we've accepted being in each other's lives as friends. There's nothing else going on at all." "Me, that makes it sound like the only reason you're not together is because she left the church." And all Mark did was shrug. "Me, well, what if she came back to the church? Would you marry her?" "Mark, oh, she's not going to do that. You might as well ask what would happen if a bicycle had 6 tires." And so then when Jordan came back to the table, Mark said to her, "Hope he wants to know if we'd be married if you weren't a godless heathen." "Jordan, why? Did you two call your mom while I was gone?" And then she and Mark both just laughed about it and changed the subject. So because of dinner and that conversation and everything else that I've written about in this post, I really feel like Jordan and Mark are in love with each other, and not just best friends like they say, and the only reason they aren't together is because they can't compromise about their religion. I think Jordan thinks that because she's okay with that decision, she expects me to be okay with being her second choice, and in the meantime, she's actually secretly wanting to be with Mark. So that makes me think that I should probably obviously just have self-respect and break up with her, because I shouldn't be in a relationship with someone who would rather be with somebody else. But then the problem for me is that our relationship has been so perfect and Jordan has always treated me so well except for this one night. The only time she's ever acted like this was on the one occasion that Mark was around in person. Normally, even when she's talking to him all the time, she's never made me feel this way. So on the one hand, I'm wondering if maybe it doesn't matter what Jordan's feelings are for Mark. As long as he isn't going to be around, it doesn't actually seem to affect our relationship. So maybe I just need to cool off and go back to trusting her that they are indeed only friends, even if it seems to be true that they have complicated feelings for each other. Or should I just end things? Relevant comments. She obviously carrying a torch that will never go out. If knowing your runner-up is something you can live with, give it a shot. But 2 years isn't long, and there's a lot of years left. If something changes later and an opportunity opens up, she'd go running. Op reply. If something changes later and an opportunity opens up, she'd go running. That's the big thing that scares me, because I do think that I could maybe live with the fact that there was someone else before me and that she eventually did choose me over him. But then I think about what could happen if Mark decided that he was ever going to leave the church like Jordan did, which doesn't seem like it's going to happen from the way they both talk about it. But then I know that I'm a different person now at 29 than I was when I was 26, so it's not impossible for him to change his mind. And then if that really was the only reason that Jordan was with me, of course she'd leave to go be with him like what she always wanted. First update. 2 days later. I talked to Jordan on Wednesday night. The TLDR update to the situation is that I didn't break up with her. After we talked about everything, I feel like that would be too much of an overreaction for what's actually going on. I do still think I was right to be upset about what I saw happening at dinner on Saturday, and Jordan didn't disagree with me about that. But I think I did jump to the wrong conclusion, that it meant that she secretly actually wanted to be with Mark more than she wants to be with me. Now that we've talked it out, I don't think there's a reason to end what's otherwise the best relationship I've ever had, and I'm glad that I didn't just immediately trust my instincts, because there was more going on with the situation that I didn't really understand that Jordan has since told me. And now I do feel like she can be given some grace in this situation, assuming nothing like this ever happens again. So thanks for the advice, especially for everyone who told me to just talk to her before I made a big decision. So when we talked, I decided to take the main piece of advice that I got from everyone and start by telling Jordan that my feelings were hurt by the way she treated me at dinner with Mark, and then see how the conversation went from there. It turned into a very long talk, so I don't want to try to remember exact quotes and get them wrong, but here are the important things. I repeated to Jordan some of what I wrote in the post and said that I felt excluded by her and Mark, especially because they were being overly touchy-feely with each other to the point where it made me uncomfortable. Jordan seemed surprised, like she didn't even notice that she and Mark were touching each other that much. But then she thought about it and said that I was right and apologized. She said that Mark is always really touchy with everybody, and not just her. I asked, and so she didn't even think about it, but that she wished I would have said something at the time because she didn't realize they were being that obnoxious. I said that was part of what bothered me, because I thought that normally she would have noticed something like that, but she was acting so different around Mark and not paying any attention to anything else, including how I was feeling, that it was honestly just made me question which one of us she cared about more, or if she cared about him as more than just a friend. Jordan apologized more and said that she could understand why it would look that way to me, but that she loves me and cares more about me than anyone else in the world, and that she didn't mean to act like that or make me feel that way. She said that she was trying to not make Mark feel like a third wheel because of being a single guy out with a couple, but obviously it backfired, and just made me feel like the third wheel instead, which wasn't what she wanted to do either. After that, Jordan explained a lot to me about her history with Mark, and basically as she explained it, she said that she fully admits she cares about him as more than just a normal friend, but she says that it's not in a romantic way. She said that's why she always specifically refers to him as her best friend and not just as her friend, and said that she would use the phrase, "He's like my brother," if it weren't for the fact that she once had an actual brother, R.I.P. So she won't use that phrasing for anyone else. According to Jordan, the main thing that happened to make her and Mark so close was that when she was 17, she tried to kill herself. And that was actually when everyone else in the community stopped talking to her, and Mark was the only person who didn't. For the next couple of years until she moved, he was literally her only friend, and she said that he checked on her every single day to make sure she stayed alive, which is also when they got into the habit of talking on the phone so much. And also, apparently during this time, Mark's parents thought they were dating and made a big deal about how they shouldn't be, and that's why she made that remark during dinner. Apparently calling Jordan a godless heathen is something that Mark's mom said. I did tell Jordan that Mark basically said to me that he thought the two of them would be married if she had stayed in the church, and I asked her if she thinks that maybe Mark is in love with her even if she doesn't feel the same way. She said definitely not, and I don't think she was being dishonest. I really don't agree with her, but I think she genuinely believes that Mark isn't into her in any way apart from friendship. Her opinion of the situation is that she also thinks she and Mark would eventually have gotten married if she had never left the church or moved, but from her perspective it would have been more because of peer pressure than anything else, and she doesn't think it would necessarily have been a good thing. She thinks Mark was just being honest about that, and that possibly from his perspective he thinks he and Jordan would have made a good couple, but he's probably thinking that because he's just assuming that in that scenario she'd be the perfect church wife, so there's no reason why they wouldn't be a good couple. But then the big thing that happened at the end of the conversation is that Jordan told me that Mark is coming back through our city on his way home from this trip, and so she was going to invite him to hang out with the two of us again, but she said that if I'm going to be uncomfortable with him around, then she won't ask him. A lot of people were saying that if she didn't offer to cut contact with him or to cut down on contact with him, it meant that she valued him over me. So the fact that she brought up on her own that she wouldn't invite him to dinner with us again because I didn't like it seemed like a really good sign to me. Based on everything else that she said, I do understand why she didn't offer to totally stop being friends with him, and I wouldn't expect her to after what she told me about what happened when she was a teenager. So now I'm deciding to take Jordan's word for it that although she and Mark are weirdly close, it's for the reasons that she explained to me and not because she's in love with him. I think the fact that she was immediately apologetic instead of defensive was good, and the way she explained everything did make sense to me. I don't necessarily trust Mark, but I do think I can trust Jordan. But I'm going to watch and see if it seems like she's still talking to him as much as she used to, or if anything changes or sounds different. I'm not going to be controlling and tell her that she can't talk to him or that she has to talk to him less, but I want to see if me talking to her about all of this causes her to act any differently at all. I'm kind of thinking she might realize on her own that the way Mark acts towards her actually does seem like he likes her as more than a friend now that I've brought it up. But I don't know. It could be that things just go back to exactly the way they were before, and I won't know if anything has actually changed until the next time Mark is around in person, but I don't think that's something I should keep worrying about before it happens. Relevant comments. So is she going to invite him to hang out with you as he comes back through? Op reply. She's not going to know. She said that she was planning to, but now wouldn't after what I had said to her. Comment. Did she acknowledge that the touching by her was inappropriate? I do not see how she could not have recognized how touchy they were and her lack of physical touch with you. Like many others have said, I'm not sure Jordan was being completely honest with you. Did you ask her how she would have felt in a reverse situation? If the three of you meet again, you might want to think about excusing yourself to go to the bathroom or something during the meal, and instead hide and film their interaction while you are gone. See if Jordan changes how she interacts when you are not there. I say to capture it on your phone, because then you have it to show her if you break up. If she interacts appropriately while you are gone, then she may have gotten the message. She should also start limiting her interactions with him, phone/text, because that relationship is not healthy, and no so should have to deal with that if you two get married. It needs to be dealt with now. Op reply. She did acknowledge that all the touching was inappropriate, yes. When she actually thought back on how much they were doing it and how over the top it was, she was embarrassed and realized she shouldn't have started acting like that just because Mark makes it seem normal. I didn't ask her how she'd feel in the reverse situation because it seemed like she got it immediately as soon as I told her how it made me feel. If the three of us are ever together again, I'll definitely be watching everything, but I don't think there's a chance of that happening for a while. Comment. If you don't want to end things immediately after what happened last time and the result of your discussion, use his next visit to gauge their behavior. Don't interfere or correct her in any way during that time. It's her test, and she needs to prove herself. Just interact normally as you're included. If you don't see what you want to see, then it's time to go. Op reply. This is what I'm thinking. I would assume that now that I've told Jordan how I felt about everything, she'll understand about what kind of boundaries she needs to have with Mark. And if not, then that's really just the end of things, I think. In a lengthy comment, OOP is asked to consider whether it's not a matter of Jordan believable, but that he wants to believe her so strongly that he is subconsciously subverting his standards for judgment. That's a really well thought out comment, and I appreciate you taking the time to write it. And I absolutely do understand why everyone thinks I'm just letting Jordan gaslight me. Honestly, I'd probably think the same thing if someone else was telling me this story, so I can't really blame everyone. But I truly don't think I'm just being steered by wanting to believe her. It's hard to convey everything that happened when we talked in a one post, but I'm just very sure that she was being genuine, and it was that convinced me that I could believe that she was saying it wasn't that I just stopped being objective because that was the easier thing to do. Honestly, I think it would have been easier to keep assuming that what I thought in the first place was true, because honestly, it's easier for me to understand. I do think that Jordan's attachment to Mark is weird and probably unhealthy, and even if she doesn't think, so I think there's more than just friendship going on from his side of things. But I think Jordan is being honest that she's not in love with him and that she wants to be with me and not him. And that was the thing that was making me question the relationship. The other stuff that I do still take issue with I think could be worked out as long as Jordan takes seriously that she can't be acting in a way with Mark that disrespects me and our relationship, even if in her head it's not in a romantic way, and from the way our talk when I think I can trust her to do so. Second update. 2.5 months later. I apologize if this isn't right. I've never tried to post to my profile on here before, but a lot of people wanted an update, and I don't think I'm allowed to post to the original subreddit. The situation seems pretty resolved now, after Mike and Jordan had an argument over everything and are no longer friends. What happened was that after Jordan told Mark we weren't available to hang out when he came back through our city, he blamed me, saying that he could tell Jordan was only saying no to hanging out because I had a problem with him. Jordan admitted that this was part of the reason and told Mark that she wanted a bit of space from him because she was trying to be respectful of our relationship. Mark got really offended and kept asking Jordan to explain why him being around was disrespectful to our relationship and kept pretending not to understand her answers. And then eventually during the conversation, he started trying to guilt Jordan into making time for him and told her that she's become a worse person over the years because the Jordan he knew would never blow him off. That upset Jordan a lot because she took it as Mark saying that she was a bad person since she left the church, and she started crying and she ended up hanging up on him. Jordan and I talked a lot afterwards. I told her that I thought Mark was toxic because anyone else would have been understanding of what she said. Jordan said that a lot of what he said during the conversation reminded her of being in the church. She said that she couldn't explain it except that it was his attitude when he tried to argue with her, but that it made her not really want to talk to him, even outside of anything to do with our relationship. Mark texted Jordan the day after asking if she really wasn't going to come see him, and if she was going to pick some boyfriend over her only friend after he's been there for her through everything. Jordan texted Mark back explaining her point again, and saying that their friendship couldn't be the same anymore as it used to be now that she was with someone, and that he should understand that. Mark texted Jordan that he couldn't believe she'd treat her best friend like that. Jordan tried to text Mark saying that a friend wouldn't be guilt-tripping her, but it turned out that he had blocked her number. After that, Jordan was feeling like she'd done something wrong and was too mean to Mark, but she and I talked about it again, and she realized that she was right to not want to be friends with Mark if he's going to treat her like she owes him loyalty. Jordan then blocked him back, including on all her socials, so that if later he changes his mind and tries to apologize, she can ignore him. A couple of weeks went by, and while I'll admit I was pretty happy about not hearing from Mark, Jordan was really bummed about how everything ended. She said that although she saw now that Mark isn't a good person to have in her life because of his reaction to her trying to set a boundary, she still felt sad and abandoned, and it was bringing back a lot of the same feelings as when she was a teenager and her other church friends all turned their backs on her. So at this point I asked her if she's ever thought about going to therapy for religious trauma, and she said she'd gone for a few months when she first left the church, but the therapist wasn't really helpful. I suggested that maybe it would be a good idea to try again with a better therapist because it sounds like all this stuff still bothers her a lot, and Jordan agreed with me and decided to make an appointment. She's had a couple of therapy sessions that she says so far are good, but I don't really ask her for any details on what they talk about, so I can't really update on that part of the situation.